not only like you know, some in vitro studies. And I would like to show you this now. So you can see this one is an in vitro study that has compared those two materials. So this one is emax, lithium disilicate, and this one is Celtra duo from Dentsply. You know, it's a zirconia reinforced lithium silicate. But you know, it looks like it's almost the same. But if you just look at the physical properties of the two, there's a big difference, right? So if you just look at, they've actually also used here Empresscat, which is of course a more weaker material. They have just included this as a reference. And so they have actually measured flexural strength, and this is measured like this. So you have a sample of ceramic, yeah, and then this is loaded on 3 different points. Then it's loaded from the top until it fractures. And the force that we need to fracture it is calculated by the area, by this area here. And this is calculated in megapascals. And there's another very important test that we should look at. It's called a fracture toughness. And the fracture toughness is measured like this. So we have the ceramic sample, and there is a little notch, right? Already a little notch. And if we load this, there is of course a lot of stress. So now we can measure how much force we need to crack this. Because now this shows you how this crack can propagate inside the material. If the force is very low, it means the crack can easily go through the material. And if the force is very high, it means that the material has a good resistance against this crack propagating. Okay, so now these are the 2 very important tests that are determining the longevity of this restoration in the patient's mouth. So you can see now, if you look at the blue bars, you can see this is the flexural strength, the mean flexural strength. And you can see Empress, because Empress is not so strong, right? It's on the lower side. And you can see now the different kind of Celtra material, which is in the range of 340 or 350 megapascals of flexural strength. But emax, on the right-hand side, you can see is much higher, significantly higher flexural strength with more than 500. So this is 574 megapascals, which is much higher than Celtra. Even, it looks like very similar material, and even Celtra, they claim is some zirconia inside, and you can see the strength is not as high as emax. And the other test, the fracture toughness, has been shown that it really correlates quite well with the clinical performance of the material. And this is why we check it here. So the fracture toughness, as you can see here, again, there's a big difference between emax, the highest one, almost 2.3, versus 1.4 with the Celtra. One of them was in the furnace, the other one was just polished, and there's no big difference. Here you can see significantly higher strength for emax. So that's why emax is a very, let's say, very strong and robust material. So you can see when you look at the CAD/CAM blocks, we can do a lot of indications, right? So here we can do like inlays, onlays, and crowns. With this block, we can do bridges, 3-unit bridges out of emax. And we also can do, that's very interesting, you can see those blocks with a hole can be combined with a titanium base. So now we can do like an implant restoration, like an abutment or like an abutment crown. So because the material is strong enough so that we can place it onto an implant. So that's interesting. And then you can see here again, at a glance, you can see the different translucency level so that we can match every clinical situation, like HD, high translucency is very suitable for inlays and onlays and veneers where you have enamel all around. And you can use MT or LT for crowns and larger restorations. And the medium opacity, this one, is only for the lab. Let's say when you have a little bit of a discoloration, then the dental technician can use the MO block to block out the discoloration, right? So that's very important. And the dental technician has even another ingot for the pressed version, which is called HO, that is very opaque. So sometimes in the anterior, your discoloration is so strong that this needs to be blocked out with a ceramic. You cannot block it out with a cement. This has to be blocked out with a very opaque ceramic. And this is the impulse ingot, which I've shown you before for this thin veneer. And this one is very opalescent. It's very suitable for younger patients that have still some opalescence on their teeth. So it's good that we can pick the right translucency level for each patient to optimize the aesthetics. Okay, now this is the technology for the implant abutments or abutment crowns. So this emax technology here is available for the CAD version, the emax CAD, but it's also available for press technology. So your dental technician can do exactly the same with emax, but just for the press technology. Okay? So the idea is to combine a high aesthetic emax with a titanium base that will be then screw retained on the implant. Okay? So this one is an abutment, and this one is the whole abutment crown. So it works like this. So this will be produced first, it will be milled, and then it will be crystallized in the furnace, and then this will be connected with a special cement, which is very opaque. So this multi-link hybrid abutment cement, it completely blocks out the titanium, so that the titanium is not shining through the restoration. Very important for aesthetics. If you use a cement which is not so opaque, then the titanium can shine through. You will see some grayish appearance underneath the crown. So this is important that we completely block out the titanium with that multi-link hybrid abutment, so that it really afterwards, it really looks like this, looks really good. Okay, so now this is a clinical case. You can see here the abutment, the implant. And in this case, you can see this one is the abutment that has been produced and milled with emax. And this will be the crown, which will be later on cemented onto the abutment. Okay, now you can see here the abutment is already done, is already screw retained on the implant. And now on top of this, so this hole here, excess hole, will be closed. You can use a little bit Teflon tape first in the deeper area, and then we will use some composite to close it. And then on top of this, we can actually cement the crown. You can see here, the crown is here cemented. Cementation in this case is very easy because this one is supra changeable. So it's easy for the excess cement, you know. And I did this like chair side with the CEREC. So I can design it, I can lift up that margin. Okay? So I can decide, do I want to have this margin here or wherever? Yeah? I can design it. But your dental technician can do it as well. So there's no problem. But anyway, cementation here is no problem because I can control my excess easily. No problem. Okay, so here another case. You can see here implants, and now we have milled. So these are not abutments. This is whole crown, all in one. But an implant crown are fully anatomic. So one piece. Yeah, it's very good, very efficient. You don't need to cement anything here. Okay, So this, you can do a try-in. For example, you can use, for the try-in, you can use a little bit of silicone, like a light body or extra light body silicone, so that you can just try it in. So this one is not yet connected, okay? It's two separate pieces still, just with a little bit of silicone that you can try it in. To check the contact points is in this one here, if everything is okay. And only then we can go for crystallization into the furnace. And after that we can connect it together permanently. This is still the try-in, you can see here. And now this is already done. You can see this is this one they lit after, but this is screw retain. And then we just close the excess holes with composite. That's it. It's a very easy but very effective treatment. So sometimes maybe if you want to build the papilla, if you want to create the nice emergence profile, you can do this in a temporary stage. For example, before you go ahead and you create your final restoration, you can do the same thing with a temporary restoration. So this block here is called TLOCAD, and it's a PMMA. PMMA for the temporary stage. If everything is good, you can use the same data that you have already in your machine and then turn this into the final emax implant restoration. It's like a system. Okay, so I'm coming back to this comparison clinically. Now we talk about clinical results with emax in comparison to Celtra, for example. And this has been actually shown or investigated by the clinicians report and their clinical team at the end of 2018. So you can see here, these crowns have been done monolithic and full contour for molars, and they have been CAD/CAM fabricated either in the lab or in the dental office. So now they were comparing Celtra and emax, and you can see here they all have been cemented adhesively with a resin cement, and this is the survival to date. You can see with Celtra they had it 1 year in the patient's mouth, and with emax they had it for 8 years in the patient's mouth. So within the first year, already 24% of the Celtra restorations of these crowns already failed. It's a very high number. I mean, every fourth patient, imagine, had to come back and get the restoration exchanged. It's very embarrassing if you are the dentist treating this. So with emax, 5% failed in 8 years. So if we calculate the failure rate in 1 year, that's what we call annual failure rate, we can see 24% for Celtra and 0.625% with emax. So that means emax almost doesn't fail. It's very, very reliable. It really works well. But some newer material, you have to be careful if you don't want to, because you have to pay it, right? It's us who need to exchange the restoration, and we need to say sorry to the patient, and we need to pay for this. All right. So the problem with Celtra was that they had a lot of fractures. You can see 26% fractures in 1 year. You can see the fracture line here, and also here. So they had a lot of cracks inside the material and fractures, and this is why they had to be replaced. So, but the summary was, in this study, emax CAD lithium disilicate has performed very well as a molar crown material with 95% survival at 8 years. So you can see this indication, single tooth or single crown restoration, also for molars with emax, works very, very well. So we don't need to use zirconia actually. Yeah? So emax is not as strong as a very strong zirconia, but is really strong enough to replace molars, like a molar crown material. You can see it also looks very good. You can see this is just a little bit of stained glaze, all monolithic. Looks good. It's good and it's strong. So if you just accumulate all the studies with all indications with emax in the course of 16 years, we see that we have a survival rate of 96%. 96% after 16 years. So millions and millions and millions restorations have been investigated for this. And this is the emax CAD. Okay, this is the material that has been digitally produced. And if you look at the press version, you know it's the same material, but it's a different way of production. Press one is the same, yeah, 96%. Of course it's the same because it's the same material, but two different ways of production. So this is, that makes the difference, right? At the end of the day, me as a dentist, I want to be sure that the material I'm using is really reliable and not only looking good. So I need to have both aesthetics and durability at the same time. Good. So let's have a look here. You can see this is a clinical case. The patient wants to have, this one is old composite. You can see discolored composite here, and this one, so the restorations have been done. Actually, this was a devital tooth. You can see discoloration. And it wasn't possible to, there was already some re-endo has been already done, so an implant was placed here. So now there's a challenge, okay? Because this one is a veneer, and this one is an implant abutment. You can see it's a zirconia abutment. Now the challenge for the dental technician is to match both, because different thickness is a challenge for the dental technician. Dental technician needs to work with different translucency ingots of emax here. Okay, you can see these are the restorations here. This one is not yet, not yet veneered. You can see it's just pressed. And after veneering, it looks like this. It's with a cut back. Okay, this is done. So it's done with a cut back. And now you can see the very nice characterization. You can see that white opaque line is called a halo line. Halo line, very often you have that with younger teeth, and when you have some translucency underneath, you can see that opalescent layer here, bluish opalescence, okay? But it looks pretty much the same. But the defect is different, right? One is a vital tooth in a veneer, the other one is an abutment. So now, if we bring the light from the back, right, remember opalescence? Here, on a black background, if the light comes from your direction, it looks bluish. And if you bring the light from the palatal side, like this one, it looks amber orange, okay? So this is original opalescence. So we really try to copy exactly the natural tooth. Okay, and this is in the patient's mouth. Okay, so this is, you can see this is the natural tooth, this is the natural tooth. Because the natural tooth has opalescence and halo, opalescence and the halo line. So here in the artificial emax tooth, we have halo line and we have the, you can see mamelons and opalescence. This is how we need to match the teeth, right? But of course, you need to communicate how these teeth look like. So the dental technician needs to know what he needs to match. You got my point? So it's very important that you take pictures, good pictures, and you take a shade, not only for the desired shade, the end shade, but you need to have a shade communication of the tooth stump as well. Okay? Because now, you know, the dental technician can actually match his teeth to the existing dentition. Okay, you can see before and after. Not too bad, huh? Okay, now this is a big challenge, right? If you want to match this tooth to this. So if this is an A2 shade, and you want to ask your dental technician, please give me here, I need a crown, I want to have an A2 shade. This is not enough information. It's not enough information for the dental technician. Because the dental technician needs to know this shade also. Okay? So you need to take a shade guide to measure what is this, what's the shade, what shade is this, and what shade is this. He needs to have two shades. The stump shade and the desired shade that you want to achieve. Otherwise he cannot match it. He needs to simulate that situation in the lab. You got my point? Of course, this shade you will not find in your Vita shade guide. You need to have a special stump shade for this. Yeah? I'll show you later on how this exactly works. But based on this information, the dental technician can select the translucency level to, to really block it out. And this is how it looks like. Yeah? So you can see here, before and after. Okay, another situation like this, very difficult. So this is very difficult to match the shade. Yeah. So we remove everything. All these teeth are D-vital, all of them. Because why I have such a strong discoloration. A lot of defects here you can see has been built up somehow. So the only teeth that we keep actually are the canines. So we have to do all of them. So the canines we keep, and you can see some build-ups already, but I need to do some endodontic treatment and also need to place some posts. So what we do first for the patient is a temporary, right? Because the patient needs to go back after that. So this is a vacuum formed tray, which I did from the wax up. So we did a wax up first, yeah, and then from the wax up we made this tray, and this tray helps me to do the temporary, yeah. So here, and by the way, this is conventional dentistry, yeah, it's no digital dentistry, just conventional dentistry. This is the temporary, so that the patient can leave and, let's say, he doesn't keep the mouth shut, yeah? He can really communicate with a decent temporary. And now, of course, you can see these are all the defects. I need to here I create some posts, some fiber posts, glass fiber posts inserted here. Of course, these glass fiber posts are bonded into the tooth. So you can see the glass fiber post that also needs to be conditioned. That one needs to be etched with phosphoric acid, and then the bonding agent comes on top of this. That's an Ivoclar post. It's called post-deck, FRC post-deck. And you can see we have the post, and we also did here the build-up here of the teeth. Okay, now you can see here with the retraction cords here placed inside, and then of course we need to have a good impression, but actually it doesn't matter if you take a scan or if you take the impression. Important is that you have a decent preparation and everything is accessible so that you get all the information inside your impression or inside the scan. Okay, now these are pressed emax, this emax press, you can see here in the A1 shade, and it has been layered also, you can see it has been layered. So layering, but these are not monolithic. Monolithic is important for posterior because that's where we need the strength. So monolithic, we need to do posterior, anterior. It's okay if we have layering ceramic on the top, yeah, it's no problem. But these are decent restorations, you can see. And now you can see here is the isolation here with the retraction cord inside. So these are all preparations for cementation. Okay, so retraction cord, and I have a rubber dam in place. Yeah, you can see here, this is one of the crowns. When you do a try-in again, if you want to do a try-in after your preparation, after etching and everything, then you need to use IvoClean, because then you get rid of the contamination. Okay, now we can use here hydrofluoric acid. And if you use hydrofluoric acid for emax, it's always 20 seconds. Yeah, 20 seconds application of hydrofluoric acid. Then we rinse it off, and we need to create a chemical bond with monobond. So we have monobond N here, and that contains MDP also, but it also is a silane methacrylate. So this can be used for almost all restorations. Yeah, doesn't matter if you use for zirconia or for glass ceramic. So you can use this for everything. So we apply this and leave it for about 60 seconds. After that, we just dry with air, and then we are ready for cementation. Okay, and we apply a bonding agent on the tooth, so we can pre-etch. We use adhesive universal or tetraid N bond universal. We seed the crown. You can see the excess. Now the question is, how do you are we dealing with excess resin cement? Of course, we can wipe it with a foam pellet. We can use it. And some of the cement, you can also light cure it for 1 or 2 seconds. And then remove with a scaler. In this case, you can see you use this foam pellet and remove it here. Yeah. And then we just, you can see these are after light curing, you can see we can use a scalpel and use just to carefully remove some of the excess, which might be still there. But you can see he is quite happy actually with the result here. You can see, of course, we could make it even brighter, but I think he's an older gentleman, right? So we don't want to give him a B1 shade or something like that. He looks ridiculous. Sometimes patients are requesting this, and if they insist on it, I give it to them. But sometimes it looks a bit difficult. But in this case, you can see it's quite decent. You can see also the surface here. The surface is not like a 20-year-old. So we can, if you have a very young patient, you have a very structured surface, because these are teeth that are not yet abraded, so they have a lot of structure. But if you have like a middle-old or older patient, you don't need to do so much structure on the surface, because naturally there is already some abrasion or some wear. But you can see here, there is some structure, it's not completely flat, otherwise it looks artificial, but it's not too exaggerated, yeah? So it's just, let's say, according to his age, to the patient's age, it just should match. So we went from here to here. And of course you can imagine that his overall appearance was dramatically improved. So he got very good feedback, because this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable for any human being to walk around like this. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there is a little compendium called the Scientific Report of emax, and there is all scientific data that you have for emax, both CAT and press, is all gathered together. In this one is a PDF. You can download this as a PDF file from the IvoClean homepage. So you can have, for further reading, you can have a look. But it's quite impressive, because I think there's not any ceramic in the market that is so well documented like emax. So you really know how it works. So this is in a course of 16 years, from 2001 to 2017. Okay, so I would like to just wrap up about the indications of emax. Of course, you can do like inlays, onlays, and partial crowns. You can do standard crowns and adhesive crowns. What's the difference? Standard crowns means that you are cementing these crowns conventionally. If you want to use a GIC or something like that, you can use it like this, but the crown must be a little thicker. So its minimum thickness would be then 1.5 millimeters if you want to do a conventional cementation. But if you are bonding the crown, let's say an adhesive cementation, you can decrease the minimum thickness from 1.5 to 1 millimeter only. Okay? And then, of course, we can do veneers, and also thin veneers, so 0.4, 0.3 millimeters. Free unit bridges, but you cannot replace molars. So the terminal abutment for the bridge would be the second premolar, right? And of course, as I've shown you, you can do implant abutment crowns and abutments. And there's one thing which I would like to show to you. I don't know if you have done this before. It's called tabletops. Or some people call it occlusal veneers, or reposition onlays. So there are different expressions for the same thing. The idea is really to just cover, actually build up the occlusal surface. For example, if you want to raise the vertical dimension of occlusion, you don't need to do crowns. You can just do occlusal veneers or tabletops. So that's a very elegant way and minimally invasive way to give back the patient the vertical dimension he needs. And I would like to show you this one here, okay? So instead of doing a crown, you can just go ahead and do a tabletop, yeah? Like this one here, tabletop. Not going down here, yeah? So just replace the occlusal table. Have you done before? Yes? It's good. It's modern dentistry because it looks good and it's less invasive. But the question is, do we have evidence if this really works? Do we have like long-term evidence for this? Because as a clinician, I want to see the long-term results in the patient's mouth. And I would like to show you a study. That's a very, very new study from Germany, from the University of Munich, by Professor Edelhoff. Okay, so he was looking at the long-term clinical performance of tabletops in patients with severe erosion. Because those erosion patients, they have lost their vertical dimension. So he was bringing back, for those patients, the vertical dimension, and he was using emax. And emax, of course, in this case, was pressed in the lab. Okay? So he had only 7 patients, but a lot of full mouth rehabilitation. So he ended up with 103 adhesively bonded occlusal onlays, or tabletops. Yeah? So observation period was up to 11 years, so which is a long-term clinical study. And then he, of course, used all the like certain criteria, like marginal discoloration, secondary caries, integrity at the margin, restoration fracture, and occlusal wear. He was looking all at these different criteria. So you can see these are quite severe erosion cases. So the patient had severe erosion. And of course, it's important that, because, you know, when you have erosion like this, and you know that the minimum thickness of your restoration has to be 1 millimeter, it doesn't mean that we have to cut down 1 millimeter from here. Because a lot of this tooth tissue is already gone. You got my point? Okay, so we need to actually control the preparation. Later on, when we talk about veneers, it's the same thing. Sometimes veneers, the patient has already lost a lot of enamel. So then, we don't need to cut into the tooth so much, maybe just a little bit, in some areas of the tooth maybe. So we need to have like a guideline during the preparation that we know how much of reduction is necessary. So we need to avoid that we over-prep. Yeah, that's what we need to avoid. So here in this case, of course, they did a wax up. First, the wax up was done in the lab, and from the wax up, you can see with the silicone key, we can control. So this is the situation. This is the situation that we want to end up with. So this one way is to do like a silicone index from the wax up, and the other option is to do like a template with these thermoplastic foils. This one, if you need a temporary, is also a good option. Yeah, from this you can make a nice temporary with these thermoplastic. It's like a suck down. Yeah. Okay, so now you can see this is the preparation. Later on, after this lecture, we talk about preparation. So I will give you some more information about the preparation style for this kind of tabletops. Yeah? Because there are also different preparation designs possible for this. You can see this is like a chamfer. Yeah? Like a chamfer here. So, I'm sorry for the quality of this slide. I just copied from the original study, that's why. Okay? But later on I will show you, because this one is a bit more invasive compared to another design preparation, but this is how this team of Daniel Edelhoff, how they prepare. Okay? So now they have heat pressed these restorations, and you can see a little bit, so all these restorations are all 1 millimeter thick, only 1 millimeter thick, and they have been stained a little bit. You can see for aesthetics. Out of emax press. Okay, again, you can see 1 millimeter. They have standardized the thickness, so the minimum thickness for this kind of restoration is 1 millimeter. And these are the restorations. You can see they look very good. You can see also they have very, very nice integration here at the margin. So from an aesthetic point of view, these restorations look very, very nice. Okay, but so now this one is baseline. So this is directly after finishing or after cementation. And this is 78 months later. A few years later on, you can see there's not much change. And this one is after 108 months. You can see here a little bit of wear, facet, a little bit of wear, otherwise they still look very good. When we talk about wear, there's always some wear, right? If you have tooth to tooth, you have wear. That's called attrition. Okay? It's always like that, the natural teeth. Now when you put in a restoration, the restoration should not have too much wear. If it has too much wear, it's a problem for the restoration. But the problem is when the material has causing wear, then the antagonist has a problem. Okay? So we need to have like a balanced wear between the opposing tooth and the restorative material. You got my point? So this one here is considered okay, yeah? Because if we don't have any wear on the material, you will have the wear on the antagonist. So we need to kind of have a balance between the antagonist wear and the material wear. Okay, so overall, you can see the survival rate here is 100%. 100% after 11 years, 100% of the restoration still fully functional in the patient's mouth. Yeah? But they had some cases where they had some marginal discoloration here. Yeah? And it was only in one patient. So only one patient, and there were some discoloration on 4 of the restorations. They had some discoloration here. Okay. And they had a little bit of slight, let's say slight little fracture line, but it's stable, so it doesn't move. Yeah, so it's stable. So everything is fully functional. Still today, after 11 years, all restoration in the patient's mouth working well. And you can see that gives us 100% of survival rate. So it is an excellent result, very good result for this kind of indication. You know, there are not so many studies for tabletops. This is why I would like to show to you, and it's a brand new studies. So the conclusion out of this research team was that emax, monolithic restorations with a minimum thickness of 1 millimeter present very reliable treatment option, especially if the vertical dimension of occlusion needs to be increased. So especially for these kind of erosion cases. If you have this, then you can reliably use emax for this indication. Okay, so if we look at both things, now we have, let's say, very proven lithium disilicate from emax, and we have zirconium oxide materials available. Yeah? When to use what? Right? When, that's our question, right? Or my question is always, when should I use emax, when should I use zirconium? So there is a limitation of emax, and there is a limitation of zirconia. Okay? So the limitation of zirconia is it's not very aesthetic if you compare it to emax. And the limitation of emax is, for most of the indication, is very strong, but some indication, emax not as strong as zirconia. Okay? But if you can match both, we can do everything. Alright? So for emax, I think let's say all single tooth restorations, like especially inlays, onlays, veneers, full crowns, posterior, anterior, and if you want to do small bridges, like anterior bridges, very good for emax, like 3-unit bridges. So everything, this can be done with emax very easily, yeah, and very aesthetically. So very high aesthetics and strength for all single tooth restorations. And this, to be honest, is our bread and butter. So this is what we do most of the time in the clinic. But then, when it comes to, let's say, molar bridges, where we want to have the security and the high strength, and especially long span bridges, this is where I need the extra high strength from zirconia. So molar bridges, long span bridges, also anterior long span bridges, we can use Zircad, for example, for emax, or if you want to use SageMax, also possible, yeah, no problem. So I think both of them is actually complementing each other quite well. But the bread and butter for me is definitely emax, because let's say when you want to do a molar crown, single crown for molar, of course you can do with zirconia, but with emax you can do it equally well. Yeah? We know that this works reliably with emax. So for me, it's easy to do, yeah, with emax. Okay, good. I just need to change the presentation quickly. Yeah? Okay. Okay.
Này vào đâu? Cái này